Something happened on that sideline in Week 14 against Green Bay that nobody in Chicago wants to talk about openly, but I'm going to break it down for you completely because it matters more than you think. Welcome back to Bears News Fan Report, your home for the most honest, in-depth analysis of everything happening with our beloved Chicago Bears. Today, I need to walk you through a situation that's been developing quietly throughout this season, something that could fundamentally reshape how this franchise builds around its future. The images from that Packers loss told a story that goes way beyond one bad play, and by the end of this breakdown, you're going to understand exactly why the next few months could bring changes that nobody saw coming. I've been following this team through every high and every low, and I've learned that the moments that define franchises aren't always the obvious ones. Sometimes it's a look on a player's face. Sometimes it's a pattern of production that doesn't match expectations. Sometimes it's the gap between what was supposed to happen and what's actually happening on the field. That's where we are right now with this Bears offense, and I need you to stay with me because the details here paint a picture that goes much deeper than surface-level analysis. Let me take you back to those final seconds against the Packers. 28-21, Chicago trailing, 4th and 1 inside the red zone. Everything on the line. Caleb Williams drops back, scans the field, and throws an interception into the end zone. Game over. But the play itself isn't what caught my attention. It's what happened immediately after. DJ Moore standing on the sideline, helmet off, visible frustration written across his entire body language. That image got captured by every camera in Lambeau Field, and it's been analyzed frame by frame ever since. Moore believed he had come open on that route. He thought Williams missed him. He thought that ball should have come his way, instead of ending up in a defender's hands. That's the player's perspective, and I completely understand where that emotion comes from in the heat of the moment. But here's where this story takes a turn that requires us to examine everything more carefully. Head coach Ben Johnson addressed this situation directly on Monday, and his words matter significantly. Johnson made it clear that Moore wasn't the primary option on that final play. He explained that Moore came open after Williams had already released the football, which means the timing wasn't there regardless of how the route developed. This isn't about placing blame on either player. This is about understanding that what looked like a missed connection might actually represent something more fundamental about how this offense operates and who fits into the vision moving forward. Moore finished that Packers game with 1 reception for -4 yards. Let that sink in for a moment. 1 catch, negative yardage. This is a receiver who came to Chicago as a proven playmaker, someone who was supposed to be a centerpiece of this offense. Rome Odunze missed the game with an injury, which theoretically should have opened up even more opportunities for Moore to command targets. Johnson himself admitted he was surprised when he saw the final stat sheet, saying they had more designed for Moore than almost any other offensive player going into that game. So why didn't it happen? Why couldn't they get the ball to their established number 1 receiver when the game plan called for exactly that? These are the questions that matter because they speak to something larger than one bad game. Moore is tracking toward career lows in both receptions and receiving yards this season. This isn't a small dip in production. This represents a significant departure from what he's accomplished throughout his career, and we need to examine why that's happening in this particular system. Williams completed 19 of 35 pass attempts for 186 yards with 2 touchdowns and that crucial interception. His development as a rookie quarterback has been the primary focus of this entire season, as it should be. Everything the Bears do right now should center around maximizing Williams' growth and putting him in position to become the franchise quarterback this organization desperately needs. That's not up for debate. But here's the complex part that requires honest evaluation. Johnson's offensive philosophy emphasizes running the football effectively and utilizing multiple tight end sets. The scheme prioritizes a physical, ground-based attack that controls the clock and wins through consistency rather than explosive passing plays. That's a completely legitimate approach, especially when you're developing a young quarterback. But it also means certain types of receivers fit better than others within that framework. Moore came from Carolina, where he was the focal point of a pass-heavy attack. His skill set thrives in space, on volume targets, in situations where he's the primary weapon getting designed, touches throughout the game. The financial reality adds another layer to this situation that we can't ignore. Moore starts a 4-year contract extension worth $110 million in 2026. That's substantial money committed to a position that might not align perfectly with where this offense is heading schematically. And here's the part that's been discussed in league circles but not widely reported publicly. Chicago could trade Moore this offseason and save $24.5 million against the cap in each of the next 4 years. They'd incur $4 million in dead cap hits over the next 3 seasons, but that's manageable compared to the financial flexibility they'd gain. That kind of cap space doesn't just sit idle. That's money that could bring in an elite pass rusher who transforms the defense. That's money that could secure a franchise left tackle who protects Williams for the next decade. That's money that addresses multiple roster needs instead of being concentrated in one position that isn't maximizing its potential in the current system. I'm not saying this is what should happen. I'm saying this is the conversation that responsible front offices have when they evaluate championship-building timelines. Now let's talk about Williams because his future is even more critical to understand. He's the first overall pick. He's the hope of this entire franchise. Everything gets built around his development and his ceiling as a quarterback. But rookie seasons are complicated, and the partnership between a young quarterback and his coaching staff matters enormously. Johnson brought an offensive system that's worked in Detroit, a system that emphasizes certain principles and requires specific execution. The question that looms over everything is whether this particular system maximizes Williams's unique skill set. Does this offense showcase his arm talent? Does it utilize his mobility effectively? Does it put him in positions to make the throws that will define his career? Or is there a potential mismatch between player and scheme that, while not catastrophic, might not be optimal for long-term development? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're the ones that define whether franchises make correct decisions or spend years spinning their wheels. Rome Odunze's emergence adds another dimension to this entire equation. He's shown flashes in his rookie season that suggest he could develop into a true number 1 receiver. His size, route running ability, and natural feel for finding soft spots in coverage all project extremely well. If Odunze continues developing at his current trajectory, he could become the primary target in this offense while costing significantly less than Moore on the cap. That's not speculation. That's basic roster construction math that every team in this league considers. The scenario where both Moore and Williams end up elsewhere seems extreme until you break down the possibilities methodically. Moore could get traded this offseason if the Bears determine his skill set and contract don't align with their offensive vision. That's a legitimate possibility based on scheme fit and financial flexibility. Williams leaving would require a more dramatic shift, something like a coaching change where a new regime decides to start completely fresh. That's less likely given his draft position and the investment made. But we've seen stranger things happen when organizations conclude they need complete philosophical overhauls. My honest assessment after studying all of this carefully, Moore leaving has realistic pathways that make sense from a team-building perspective. The cap savings, the scheme fit questions, the emergence of Odunze, they all point toward a potential move that wouldn't shock me if it happened this spring. Williams staying should be the overwhelming priority, which means ensuring the system and supporting cast around him are optimized for his specific talents. If that requires difficult decisions about other players, including established veterans, then that's what championship building demands. Here's what gives me optimism, despite all this uncertainty. The Bears are finally asking the right questions and making decisions based on long-term vision rather than short-term comfort. Johnson was hired to implement a specific offensive philosophy. If that philosophy requires roster adjustments to reach its full potential, then making those adjustments is the responsible path forward. This isn't about giving up on talented players. This is about understanding that championship teams are built through strategic alignment of scheme, personnel, and financial resources. I want to hear directly from you in the comments below. Do you think the Bears should consider trading DJ Moore this offseason if it creates significant cap space? Would you be comfortable with changes to the offensive system if it better suits Caleb Williams' development? What moves do you want to see this franchise make to build a genuine championship contender? Your perspective matters, and I read every single comment you leave. If you want the most thorough, honest analysis of everything happening with the Chicago Bears, make sure you're subscribed to Bears News Fan Report. Hit that notification bell because major developments can happen at any moment, and I'll be here breaking down exactly what it means for our team's future. We're building something special in Chicago, and even if the path requires difficult decisions, I believe this franchise is finally heading in the right direction. Let's bring a championship back to Chicago together.